And it says we are live. Folks, welcome to the Cover One. I'm your co-host, now kind of taking sort of over for the primary host duties as Kyle Silagyi is
Rightfully
channeling
so.
his inner Michael Jordan, powering through unfortunately some rest in peace, Kyle. We will be thinking of you. And so he will be here. He will not be doing quite as much talking and chatting as you might be accustomed to. So you're just gonna have to deal with me on that front. Yeah, so just welcome in everyone. I'm sure we're all perfectly fine and happy and reasonable about this game that happened yesterday. I know I was totally fine. But before we get into all of that, just want to give a quick couple of that this show, along with many other shows and other content, is brought to you by the Cover One Network. And if you enjoyed this show for some reason, I suppose, then you can watch some other shows that are probably with reading a bunch of more content. And if you really want to get the whole experience, you can go ahead and just start looking into the one and only One Pass with Cover One. That gives you all sorts of exclusive content, gives you access to the Slack channel for $57 a month. Or not a month. Oh my God, that's a lot of money. I would love for that to be $57 a month. It is not, though. It is a very cheap price for $57 a year. Really, a $57 month value at $57 a year. I mean, you're basically making money if you sign up for One Pass. Let's be honest. But you do get tons of extra content. You get access to the Slack channel where you have this community of Bills fans that just go back and forth games about pretty much anything you want to talk about. I mean, there's all sorts of chats and subgroups that are in there, and it's always a good time. Everyone, people are just hanging out in there, especially on game day. So it is very much worth it. Sign up for One Pass today. You even get the shirt and the decal if that's something you're into. It's a lot of fun. So sign up for Cover One. That helps all the different things that we have access to, like Football Outsiders, SIS, and Pro Football Focus, all that good stuff. It allows us to bring you the best content that we can put together, which is a nice diplomatic way of saying that, I suppose. This show is also brought to you by our favorite website, Underdog Fantasy. Now, all of our fantasy football leagues are done and over with, I assume. We're all doing different playoff scenarios and whatever to try and kill our time and make up for the fact that we didn't win our home league. Fortunate enough to do that. I managed to win one of my leagues. It was only 1 out of 3, but it counts.
What kind of losers don't win their fantasy leagues? Nerds.
But you can also use Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em contests, and you can win money predicting if Josh Allen will go over his yard total, his touchdowns, his completions, or more. If you think Allen to Diggs is going to blow up this week, you can put them both in your Pick'em, predict up to 5 different over-unders correctly, and you can win 20 times your original money. And if you use the promo code COVER, your first Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. That is 100 free US dollars right in your pocket to use for this particular website, and that is under the sign up using the promo code COVER1 and start winning today. Wow, Kyle.
I put my fantasy trophy on my head just to prove that I am the best fantasy player, and you should look at Underdog Fantasy today. This is not a Jets helmet. Don't even look at that. Don't even worry about the
ignore that.
Don't worry about the team. Right, that's irrelevant.
Yeah. That's it's just story. A trophy.
Right, it's just a trophy. That's the thing about trophies. They mean nothing.
Lastly, and yes, we do somehow have 3 different sponsors for this show,
What?
which, like, how and why?
I still don't know. I'm
Not more
still
money. But for
May-
this last sponsor, we will go to our wonderful friend and compatriot here at Cover One, Mr. Greg Thompson.
Hey guys, Cover One is excited to announce our new partnership with BetUS. BetUS has a live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business, and an easy deposit and withdrawal process with the fastest payouts in the industry. Our loyal Cover One fans get a choice between 2 exclusive offers, either a 125% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,500 or a free $50 bet with no deposit required. Just use promo code COVER1 on the links provided in the show description below. BetUS, where the game begins.
Thank you, Mr. Greg Thompson.
Thank you.
That is, I believe, the last thing I had to do. Kyle, you do a
Good
lot
job.
of like. Thank you, RJ. Thank you. Someone has to.
Someone needs to care about
seriousness sometimes. It's not going to be me, unfortunately. So, sorry about that.
No, you're good. I had a hell of. You know how Nyheim Hines before every punt return he just says, "If I die, I die."
Totally.
That's how I felt last week, but instead of returning punts, I was laying in my bed. I was just like,
that makes sense.
If I die, I thought I was done for. I was like, oh, because I was one of the few. I thought I was COVID undefeated, right? I was like, I've never had it. I'm never gonna get it. That's just how this works, right? If I haven't gotten it yet, I'm not getting it. But then I actually got it. And then I watched that football game yesterday, and I felt more sick in that 4-hour span that game happened.
4-hour game that didn't even go into overtime.
I felt more sick during that than I did at any point in which I had COVID. So that's not a political statement. Okay. I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you. When I had COVID, it was actually at the end of the 2020 run of like beating the Steelers and then the Niners, and like they were just scoring points, winning games, having fun. So that helped. And I also just in my bed 8 hours in the day and just played Star Wars: The Old Republic the entire time. So there was also that. But yeah, that doesn't seem like something you're doing. So that doesn't really help right now.
No, I'm playing Madden, which does lead to a point I have later about Madden offenses, because I'm very familiar with Madden offenses right now.
And on that note, jump into it. We're gonna start with one of your takeaways, Kyle. What is your first takeaway from this?
Yeah, so let's start with a positive, because I'll get into positives and negatives in general on a grander scale later. That's my second takeaway. But my first takeaway is an overwhelming positive, and that's the play of Tremaine Edmunds, because he was all over the field yesterday, making major impacts, and just his presence was felt throughout the entire game. Had 5 total tackles total tackles. Yeah, that's the phrase. 3 total pressures, yes. 2 hurries and a sack, according to PFF. Also had 4 pass breakups, which is the most of any linebacker in the last 2 years, according to ESPN. So, and this is out of a player that, like, our biggest issue about him, or our biggest concern with him for a long time, has been a lack of splash plays. And yesterday he has 4 pass defenses, which is the most of any linebacker in 2 years. Those are all splash plays. And like the splash plays are becoming more and more consistent for Tremaine. Like you saw him in the final regular season game getting an interception. And again, they're just stacking up. They're coming in bunches, which is what splash plays often do. But for Edmunds, it's fun now, because like at least the last 2 years now, his play has been pretty consistent. He has developed into a very serviceable, good middle linebacker in that Bills defense. And he really is arguably, I don't want to say the key cog, but he is one of the main cogs in that Bills defense. And just the biggest critique about him has been like, yeah, he's good. He certainly plays his role, but can you give him a big contract when he's not really making those impact plays, those game-changing plays, if you will. And then you see yesterday, he makes a bunch of game-changing plays, right? He makes a bunch of plays where you feel Tremaine Edmunds out there, you feel his presence, and he impacts the flow of the game and just how the game is played. And again, this comes days after the Roquan Smith extension, which is interesting timing, right? We have I think we did a live stream shortly after the Roquan Smith extension, and we were talking about how the Roquan Smith contract is at the floor or the ceiling for Tremaine Edmunds' new deal. Regardless, it is a framework, right? It's certainly going to be brought up by Edmunds' agent when Bean talks to him later this offseason, or this offseason. It's not even the offseason yet, but yeah, it's just, I'm glad to see, I mean, regardless of how this impacts his contract status or whatever, I'm just glad that the Edmunds slander is finally going away, right? And like, I was kind of in the middle of it for a long time. I was like, yeah, no, I see both sides. I think he certainly has his role. He's certainly a good player, but I can see that you'd want more splash plays. And now he's finally, I think he's playing the best football we've seen out of him as a professional, which only makes sense, right? He's in his 5th year and he's 23 years old or whatever, or 24. He's finally, he did put it all together a while ago, and now he's finally, I guess, reaping the benefits from that. And I'm glad that Bills fans are kind of seeing him for what he is finally.
Yeah, I mean, he was just phenomenal in yesterday's game. Just all over the place, making plays. He was when they blitz and create some pressure. He was right there. He was great effort the entire game. I mean, it was really impressive. A very, very, very good game. And I'm looking forward to the day that the Bills actually do extend him, because it's gonna be quite the day online. Speaking of, points out here, the only thing I can look back on as funny is trying to decide who had a bigger meltdown, the Bills or David on Twitter. I was seeing his tweets during commercials. David let some emotion show. Really, I to succumb to the moment when talking about football, especially online, because of that. Basically, I try to keep my forwards. I was absolutely going through it yesterday. It was a disaster in my mind. It was that was not a fun. And, you know, obviously, I think that is another thing that led to a lot of frustrations. Was just sort of like, it very clearly looked like it was just going to be exactly what easy coasting throughout the game, big lead. Dolphins can't possibly come back on this with Skylar Thompson at quarterback, and then the Bills kept making mistakes and taking advantage, and it just became like, how in God's name did you have a first quarter like that, and it's at halftime and we're ahead by 3? It's very frustrating to watch. But on a more serious note about Tremaine Edmunds, I think that this is, if he continues this type of playoff, yeah, I don't know that he's ever gonna leave Buffalo anytime soon, if that's the case, because he was just phenomenal. I was impressed with Edmunds. And that kind of leads into my second takeaway, was there's the defense was good, as RJ literally just said, stealing my thunder, RJ. The defense was good for the most part.
Sam's one position group,
they just got thrown into some. They were just thrown into bad spots.
Yeah,
I mean, like that interception that Allen threw deep to Howard. I mean, it was like inside the 5-yard line, and then it got returned out to the 50. Yeah. So you're in a bad position there. Then one of the next gets hit right as the ball gets there, pops up. Javon Holland gets an interception, brings it back another 20 or so yards before he gets pushed out of bounds. So then they're in a bad position there. And then, it's just, what are you supposed to do? Even with Skylar Thompson at quarterback, there's still something that the Dolphins could cook up. And to be perfectly honest, like, the Dolphins also killed them. They had that early Jaylen Waddle drop. They had the Tyreek Hill drop on the slant. And I mean, for most players, a drop on a slant is whatever. But with Tyreek Hill, it's like that, one broken tackle, and that could have been nuts. Mike Gesicki had that gorgeous seam pass drop literally right into that circle in between his arms. Never hit his hands, and it literally went into in his arms, like that right there. That's where that ball went into, which is very funny for somebody that I've compared to Kelvin Benjamin before. I mean, it was the defense really did play fairly well, and it wasn't just Emmons. It was Teron Johnson making plays, Trey White making plays.
Yeah.
I mean, it was quite phenomenal. The only thing was frustrating, which and I'll get a little bit more into that, was just the lack of pass rush, especially against a Dolphins offensive line that was missing a number of pieces, and some of them just didn't practice for most of the week. It was quite disappointing, especially against a third string quarterback. And Skylar Thompson definitely outperformed expectations. I mean, he had an abysmal 40% completion percentage, but obviously we just talked about the drop his receivers had, and he definitely made some plays on his own, but you got to be able to do something, man. You got to be able to figure something out defensively. And when they weren't, I'll get more into later. Kyle, what is your second takeaway?
This might turn into a bit of a rant here, so if I have to stop for water or whatever, please forgive me. It might happen. So it's dangerous to, I guess, have a discourse about discourse, but that's exactly what we're going to do right now. I think that it's important to note after games like this, right? Not even just this particular game against the Dolphins, the one that we're talking about, but just games like this in general, that this is a good team, right? This is still a very good football team. And they just kind of got in their way a few times yesterday with a bunch of turnovers that, a lot of them were ugly. The Allen one on the Brown, whatever, that was very ugly. And then the Beasley one, whatever, and the fumble, yikes. And then special teams play wasn't great, but just this team shot itself in the foot numerous times yesterday. But that being said, it wasn't all bad in this game, right? They put up 423 yards of offense, 4 total touchdowns. They were 9 of 16 on third down. This compared to 4 of 16 on third down from Miami. Allen had a few incredible throws, right? You think about the one drive with the Diggs throw and then the Knox touchdown, right? Just incredible throws from Josh Allen. He had a couple of incredible throws yesterday. So, and the defense, like you said, David, largely looked really good, largely played really well when they weren't placed into situations where their backs were directly up against the wall. So it is fine to come out of this game, or it is, I guess, it's I guess good to come out of this game feeling optimistic, and you can look at this game and see what happened to LA this weekend, right, with them blowing that lead against Jacksonville, and see that Cincinnati looks beatable, and then you can be optimistic moving for as you look forward into the playoffs. But I also think it's important to look at all of that and say okay, this team had some good moments yesterday. It shouldn't be all criticism. It shouldn't be all critiques. But you also have to say, okay, but they're also not a flawless team. I feel like there's been a bit of overcorrection in the discourse where people are maybe a little too complimentary, right? Where people are making too many mistakes for what this team did yesterday and want to be too overly praising of the things that they did well. And it's well, no. This again, this is just me. I have COVID brain fog right now, so please forgive me. But just this team just it gets in its own way frequently. As I said, it just I kind of brushed it off a couple moments ago, where it's just like, yeah, this team still played well despite getting in its own way, but it still got in its own way numerous times yesterday. You think about the 3 turnovers, you think about the special teams play, you think about just all these things that, again, these are consistent issues that this team faces, is getting in its own way. People often say the only team that can beat the Bills is the Bills, and that's incredibly true. The team just shoots itself in the foot. And
I think we basically said that last week when I think Dolphins actually win this game. And I said, I don't think the Dolphins have a chance of winning this game. I think the Bills are the only team that can beat the Bills, and that was exactly more or less what played out. It was just, and I said this in my recap, they just shot themselves.
Yeah.
They ran out, and they ended up winning that game despite all the gunshot wounds. But that's what happened.
Yeah, and again, just like going off that, the offense just lacked cohesion, lacked just flow, and was just stagnant, didn't evolve. And it's like these aren't new issues. This is something that we've been talking about all year, is just this lack of offensive flow and cohesion. The line yesterday, the offensive line, Allen faced 21 total pressures yesterday, according to PFF. We talk about the pass rush, no consistent pass rush. Like, it is fine to, I guess, be optimistic. And like I said, look at the things they did well, and look at what that Cincinnati looks beatable, and be happy that we didn't do what the Chargers did. But it's also irresponsible to just like pretend that this team doesn't have flaws. It is, I think we have to, as a fan base, find a happy medium and inhabit that happy medium, and just be like, okay, yes, everything's not great, but everything's not terrible, right? Like that line from Chernobyl, not great, not terrible. This is not a flawless team. It is a flawed team, but it is still a very good team in a league of also flawed but not great teams, right? In a league where teams are all a varying level of that, right? There are teams that do better things, or some things better than others. Some teams are much better than others, right? Like just in terms of overall strength. But just like, look, the Bills have fewer flaws than some, but they also have, a few very clear deficiencies that, you can be concerned about. But at least when you compare it to the rest of the league, it's not like the sky is falling. So I guess like my takeaway is, like, don't be too concerned, but also don't like not critique anything, right? If your answer to the over critique is don't critique anything, I don't think that's the right answer either.
Yeah, I don't know how you watch that game and just sort of say like, oh, everything's going to be fine. It'll be fine. They can correct their mistakes, because I feel like we've been saying that all season. It's still 13-3 despite all the mistakes that they've made, and that's fine. But those 3 losses were pretty much exclusively because of the mistakes that they made. It wasn't just because they got outclassed or out maneuvered by some great scheme or anything. It was just like, you had a chance to that fight multiple times, and couldn't do it because of just weird, stupid mistakes. You had multiple chances to beat the Jets in the Meadowlands, couldn't do it because you turned the ball over and couldn't stop the run. And then obviously that first Dolphins game, you went up and down the field on them pretty consistently, and it couldn't execute in the red zone. It's all of their own doing, which in its own way, I suppose, is encouraging. That truly can beat the Bills themselves, but it's also just an unfortunate reality that like they are more than capable of beating themselves. This is not just like some fleet team. It's hard to really pinpoint exactly all of the problems. Some of them are more consistent or persistent than others. I mean, Josh Allen having weird, dumb turnovers happens. Defense tackle like Milano on, what was it, 4th and 13, decides to go for a layout hit instead of just standing him up. It's 4th and 13. Just stand him up. Relax. It's This team is not terrible, obviously.
They're quite good, actually.
They're very good. It's there was no reason for them to let this game be as close as it was. And it was largely because of mistakes that they made. And the Dolphins, to their credit defensively, like they really just went full aggression. You talk about an offense man defense, they just said, we're going to bring the house. We're going to bring it as many times as possible. We're going to bring 5-6 man pressures. And on those 5-man pressures in particular was where they were most successful, because they could win those one-on-ones because they have guys like Jalen Phillips and Christian Wilkins and from who had another sack yesterday because Melvin Ingram refuses to leave my Bills-related nightmares. God forbid.
It's wild. I still don't understand that.
But when you do those 5-man pressures, you have 5 guys coming at the quarterback. You have 5 in coverage, and then you have one guy either playing as just deep over the top. And when your guys are winning, when your pass rushers are winning their one-on-one matchups, it doesn't really matter how well or how poorly your corners are covering. It becomes a panic move from Josh Allen, and rightfully so, because his offensive line kind of sucks sometimes when it comes to pass protection and picking up stunts and blitzes and blah blah blah. But yeah, it was very unfortunate. It be as close as it was for the reason that it was. It just is what it is. But I think my last takeaway was top empty your foot, which I think I covered pretty well just there. So we're gonna move on to the next section.
There are a couple of comments I want to get.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the comment section is going crazy tonight, and that I appreciate you guys for. Jordan Poyer's driver writes, but now they're in the playoffs, so we're not comparing them to the rest of the league. We're comparing them to teams that remain in the playoffs. Yes. I feel like I maybe didn't make that distinction enough, but even like comparatively to the rest of the teams in the playoffs, right? It's like they're like Cincinnati, we saw yesterday. Cincinnati looks beatable, right? Cincinnati has flaws. Kansas City has flaws, that being that they play ring around the rosy. Like I don't think we talked about that. Was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
That is the most
so stupid.
Full team has chosen to do against another NFL team.
I hated it. I watched
T.O. wishes he could be that disrespectful to another NFL franchise.
That's why he was coming out of retirement.
T.O. coming into the Dallas, that's nothing. Ring around the rosy before you throw a screen for a touchdown that gets called back from holding. That's pure disrespect.
I mean, it's like, look, I mean, the Raiders, yeah, sure, do it. Disrespect the Raiders all you want. That's kind of funny, but just like with the ring around the rosy, and it's the Chiefs, which just makes it infinitely worse. But yeah, just like I can't find any of the other comments, but just like, yeah, it's just, yeah, we can move on. I guess we can move on. It's just a frustrating game, but again, I think we're at a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna move on to what went right and what went wrong.
What do we do in this segment?
We talk about what went right and what went wrong. It's a little tricky. I understand. There's a reason why we explain it every week.
Right.
So I'm gonna start with what went right. Because I think it's hilarious. And I'm also gonna sort of talk about something else that went wrong that related to what went right was Mike McDaniel just choosing to light every single one of his timeouts on fire. Good God. How many times does it have to happen where the call is not there fast enough? It's not being called in the huddle fast enough. It's not being called to the quarterback fast enough. Whatever the issue was, like, figure it out, man. Like, come on. I don't get it. It was constant especially in the second half, and he burned all 3 of his timeouts just to try and save a couple of 5-yard penalties. I don't get it. It was
like, I doubt he was.
We cannot confirm. We can't or deny that. Especially someone like Mike McDaniel.
Right now, in my head, Mike McDaniel vapes. He absolutely vapes.
Mike McDaniel is a total vape god. Let's be honest.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He hits that blue raz, dude. No, he wouldn't be a blue raz guy. He would be some like really niche flavors.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd be like butterscotch or something.
Right. Werther's.
Yeah, this is a man.
Yeah. Grandma's Werther's. That's Mike McDaniel.
But yeah, Mike McDaniel just like completely lost the manager. And after the game on the 4th and 1, where he had to call a timeout, or could he? No, didn't call a timeout because they play of game penalty to 4th and 6. They didn't get it. After the game, he was like, well, I was told by either the officials, I was standing next to one of the refs, or I heard my staff say with conviction. I heard someone on the staff say with conviction that we had a first down. So I was calling a play for first down. I didn't know it was 4th and 1. We didn't have a play ready for 4th and 1. So
good job, Mike.
Like, okay. So that explains that one. What about all the other times, dude? Like, what was going on, man? Like, my gosh, just such a, and the way he phrased it and said it was just so weird. Like, I kind of want to put him,
not from McDaniel.
Put him in the same room now and just see who is the first person who can put together a coherent sentence. It would take a while. Like, there were a couple times listening to that game with Tony Romo on the broadcast, and I looked at my dad and I was just like, "What did he saying anything?" It's bizarre. No, I say all that. I criticize McDaniel for wasting his timeouts in that way. He used one timeout in the second half to get his pretty much his weekly defensive timeout in because he does that.
That's on me. That's on me.
Good?
I'm doing something.
Good?
I'm doing something.
COVID brain, working. Man. It's
working
okay.
here.
It's okay. So
I'm trying to make a live meme.
So we had
I'll
McDermott.
I'll make the live meme now. Okay, so here's the meme. Imagine this with like a meme talk or meme text, and it says, when I'm in a talk about nonsense competition and my opponent is Mike McDaniel. There we go. That's the meme. It would have been funnier if I didn't screw it up and also I said it coherently. If I didn't sound like Mike McDaniel when I said it out loud. That's the meme. Okay. When I'm in a nonsense competition and my opponent is Mike McDaniel. That's the meme. Thank you. This is the first podcast that's
so
ever
McDermott
made a
used
meme
his
live.
weekly. So McDermott wasted or didn't waste. I don't want to say waste. That first timeout was fine. I thought it was an unusual formation in the red zone, right? Like, I'm okay with using a timeout to try and prevent a score in the red zone. It didn't work out, but you can't always just play the results. You have to talk about the process, especially with someone like McDermott, who I think that was fine. You know, I don't love using defensive timeouts, but like a weird formation that you're not used to in the red zone makes more than perfect sense. That's fine. The other timeout was a little panic move. And it feels like, and I'm 100% armchair psychoanalyzing here. So just, take this for what it is. But it feels like if NFL coaches who are NFL coaches are very detail oriented, right? That's sort of how they get their jobs typically. There are some who just seem to be on another level in terms of details. where they just see everything in front of them and they have everything fully prepared. And McDermott feels like one of those types of guys. And so when he sees something that is like potentially really bad for the team, he wants to take that time out and get them straightened out. I understand that instinct. I am not saying I disagree with the instinct, but like sometimes you just gotta not let yourself be a prisoner of the moment and just sort of let your guys play ball, right? Like on that play in particular, it just felt like if they get, unless this was a sort of like clearly this is going to be a touchdown, and maybe it was, I don't know. I can't see the field and football the same way that someone like Sean McDermott does. I just don't. Maybe he saw something like that. But to me, it just felt like he really didn't want them to convert that fourth down and did everything he could to get the quote unquote perfect position to prevent that fourth down conversion. And it just felt very weird to me. And yeah, obviously it ended up working out in their favor. But then again, we're also then playing the results and not the process in that particular case. So McDermott in that regard, but not quite as bad as McDaniel. Just absolutely, it was brutal. And actually, RJ's absolutely on fire in this chat tonight.
Thank you.
He brings up a great point. Brad Allen's crew is atrocious. Plays that should have been dead continue because they didn't blow the whistle. They were unbelievably bad at just stopping a play. How many? It had to be at least 3 or 4 different plays got completely played out before somebody actually blew the play dead, and then they had to stop and say, "Oh, by the way, the timeout was taken."
Yeah,
timeout was. It's like, you understand that you guys are the one in charge of this, right?
You're in control.
Play down.
Yeah,
you are the ones in control. You are the captains now. Like, this is your job. Like, you can't just sit there and be like, "Oh, by the way, that didn't count. Sorry. You guys didn't hear my whistle."
Right.
Sorry, you didn't hear that? You didn't hear that?
Meager little whistle boys.
I mean, it was like they gave half-assed whistles and just expected everyone to stop.
You don't want to. Why aren't you listening to my whistle?
Hey, like, you got on that thing for a while, and you got to get in the way of some of these very large adults who are trying to kill people. Like, I understand that's a scary thing to do, but like, you got to just be like, "Hey, stop. Not happening."
Just a little shy, man. They're just a little insecure.
It's just so bad. I mean, and officiating was a mess all week. Supposed to be the like top tier playoff crews, right? Like the best crews are supposed to be the ones in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, good God, this is going to be a rough postseason. I mean, between the Jacksonville game where Joey Bosa wants to square up on Sean Smith, this game with Brad Allen just having no idea how to stop a. And then the Giants where one of the refs just like, "Oh yeah, we'll just throw roughing the passer on Dexter Lawrence for slightly being aggressive on Kirk Cousins," I guess. Insane, bizarre.
Can we talk about Kirk Cousins? I mean, I saw the dots afterwards on his, final throw of the season, but just like still 4th and 8, and you're like, check down.
I listened to his explanation of that play, and like, it makes sense. He thought he was under pressure. He thought he was about to get sacked. It's 4th down. You want to just get the ball out. I get it. I don't disagree with any part of that process. And he said that he felt like Jefferson was like too covered to try and just throw it up to him. So he just threw it down to Hockenson, who was great in that game and was great in their previous game against the Giants, but like that was 5 yards short of the sticks.
Right, yeah. The only issue is that
covered.
TJ Hawkinson was 5 yards short of the sticks, right? That's kind of the bugaboo. Like, what are you doing?
It was bizarre.
Just
what a game. Now I will say that was a very a relatively normal and well-paced game. Especially after the 4-hour marathon. Can you imagine if that game went into overtime?
No.
Can you imagine?
No.
That would have been a 5-hour game.
And like, I still can't tell you why it was so long. Like there's really like nothing crazy that went on. It was just kind of the Bills didn't really
60% of Skylar Thompson's passes went incomplete. That's what went wrong.
Yeah, that happened. And then, the Bills really didn't run the ball that much, which is a lot of incomplete passes, a lot of clock stoppages. Just took forever. But yeah, and then again, the pick me refs certainly didn't help. Just the pick me boy refs, just like, oh, you don't want to listen to my whistle? That's okay. No one wants to. Ridiculous. Sad boys. Okay.
Oh my gosh. All right. That was a long time for one of our what went right, what went wrong. So Kyle, what was your thing that went right?
No, we're picking it back up. We were flying through it. I thought we were going to be done in like a half an hour. So what went right? I have defenders making plays on the football, which is not something that the Buffalo Bills defenders have often done this year, at least not seemingly. But no, yesterday, again, 7 pass breakups as a team yesterday, according to Pro Football Focus. Tremaine Edmonds having 4. And then again, we talked about it earlier. Tre'Davious White had a couple just really good plays on the ball downfield. Taron Johnson did as well. And then Kyer Elam having his best game as a professional. I don't know if we've really talked about him yet, but he had an incredible game. We'll talk about him later in True or Rubbish.
But game from Elam.
Right, great game from Elam. Good game in coverage, and again, just making plays on the ball, including that game-winning PBU on Mike Gesicki, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Just again, a good time for the secondary to start making plays and being aggressive on the football is when you're in the playoffs here. Just really good, reassuring stuff. And yeah, I was very pleased to see that.
Yeah, this is a great time for them to start doing that because next week you have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd coming up on you. So this is a time to be making great plays on the ball at the catch point. That is like a genuinely very encouraging sign to see. And just seeing that, like, every week, it feels like Trey White is just getting better and better and back more to his normal self. So I am very intrigued by how that's all going to go next week against the Bengals. So I'm going to move on to what went wrong for me, and that was the pass rush, particularly on just straight up 4-man rushes. Like we said before, this Dolphins offensive line has not been great all year. But especially given all the injuries that they had, there was no reason for the Bills to just generate so little pressure on just straight up 4-man rushes. Now, when they decided to get a little creative and do some simulated pressures and creepers, they really found some more success, whether it was, dropping guys like Shaq Lawson and Greg Rousseau into coverage and bringing like Milano and Edmonds. Like the Dolphins really struggled to pick up those types of schemes and games really effectively. So I thought that was great. And I think that's a really good sign from Leslie Frazier that he was able to implement those a little bit more effectively. Because sort of in the last month or so, I feel like they've been a little too vanilla in that regard. So that was good to see that, like, they weren't afraid of just doing something like that. It was good to see that, but there was no reason for this team, for this defensive line in particular, to not win their one-on-one matchups most of the time. And Ed Oliver on one of those drives ended up really stalling the Dolphins by getting a tackle for loss and a sack, which was great. But like that needed to be more consistent throughout the whole game. The defensive ends needed to be more consistent throughout the whole game. because you can't just play those sim creeper games all day long, especially against a team that you have upcoming like the Cincinnati Bengals. Even though they're also going to be down several offensive linemen next week, because now they were down La'el Collins, now they're down Alex Kappa, and now they're down Jonah Williams. And while Jonah Williams hasn't been great this year, I mean, you lose a starter when you're trying to make a playoff push on your offensive line. It's pretty tough. So I do think it's going to be a big test for this. I mean, we knew it was going to be a big test for this defense going against this Bengals offense, but it's going to be a big test for this defensive line to just get pressure. And Joe Burrow, exactly. He's not Lamar, he's not Allen, he's not Mahomes, where he just sort of finds slipperiness and can run for 20, 30 yards, but he's a tricky dude to get down in the pocket because he can just manipulate things, he can sidestep, he can move around, and he's not afraid of making plays either because he has a great group of receivers to throw the ball up to. And again, that's where playing the ball well when it comes towards you is going to be really key in those situations. So, but that's the other thing, right? Is like the more that you can put the Bengals into that sort of position, into that sort of desperation position on offense, the better. But you can't do that if you're just not getting pass rush, right? Like you can't. Yeah. Joe Burrow is not just going to blindly throw into bad coverages. That's just not the quarterback that he is. He's not going to make a total panic move and misread something, or unless it's just a supremely impressive disguise in coverage. But what he will do is throw something up that maybe he shouldn't when he's under pressure, just like any other quarterback. So you got to get him into those situations. But you can't do that if your defensive line just can't get pressure against bad offensive lines, and that's something that they need to do in next week's game. So, Kyle, what is the thing that went wrong for you?
We've alluded to it numerous times tonight. So let's get into it. This Madden offense, right? And I wrote it down in our document as Madden play calling, but I think that's unfair. I think it's unfair to refer to it as Madden play calling. So I'm going to pin the blame on everybody here and just give an all-encompassing Madden offense. So the Bills started this game, right? They realized the situation. They realized that the emotions in that stadium were high yet again, just as they were last week. Maybe, a different style or a different type of emotion this week, but, still certainly an emotional place inside that stadium. And they wanted to ride that wave again and go for the kill shot. And you see that, I think it was the first, I almost just coughed on the podcast, would have been not good. But you see that on the first, I think it was the first play. Allen just goes deep to Diggs, barely misses him, right? And then that drive stalls out. But then on the next drive, you hit the deep shot to Diggs, and then that play to Knox in the end zone. And just throughout the game, regardless of what the score was, it's just like the offensive idea and the offensive identity never really shifted. It was always just like deep shot, deep shot, deep shot, deep shot. And it was just like sometimes it worked, right? Just like you would sometimes hit Davis deep. You would sometimes hit Shakir deep. I think he was targeted twice deep, and he actually caught one of them. But it's just like, I also think it's unfair of me to sit here and say the offensive identity didn't shift, because given how the game played out and what the score was at certain times, you wouldn't necessarily want to take your foot off the gas completely. You wouldn't want an overarching or a very large shift in offensive identity, right? Because again, they were up 7. Their largest lead was 17-0, and that's in the second quarter, right? I don't necessarily want them to just be let's milk the clock. Let's just milk an entire half.
And that was the thing, right? Given the way that the Dolphins were playing defense, obviously super aggressive. You don't cower to aggressive defense. You have to be aggressive against it. Yeah. Right. As soon as you cower to aggressive defense, then they're all over you, and it's hard to really dig right out of that. So I especially early on, I loved the aggression. I love pushing the ball downfield. I love hitting those deep. It made perfect sense. That was exactly what they should be doing. But especially, I was glad that they didn't try to just run. Runs, obviously the James Cook touchdown on the counter read bash. But I was glad that they didn't force the run in those circumstances, because again, when you are just crowding the line of scrimmage, all of your sort of run blocking assignments get a little weirded. Trying to figure that out. And I was just glad that wasn't forced. But, again, this is sort of where bringing the quick game into into the fold matters, because if you can't just straight up run the ball, then you have to replace that with something to try and keep the defense at least guessing a little bit, or just sort of taking away that immediate aggression and downhill movement that they were trying to get to. So doing, and obviously when you're consistently pressing like the Dolphins were, things like a quick bubble screen isn't the best.
No.
Going out there, maybe you don't, but you still have things like slants, you still have curls, there's things to do. And again, not all of this is on Dorsey. I'm taking your spot. You go ahead and talk about this, because I feel like you're already going to make these points. I don't need to steal them from you.
Well, that's why I said about I don't want to blame it entirely on Dorsey, because am I going to be mad at Ken Dorsey for calling plays that had streaks or whatever? No, right? Those are football plays, right? They have those. But just so part of it is on Allen for just going for the deep shot consistently. And part of it is on Dorsey, right? For one, and like RJ writes here, there were a few deep shots where the back came in to block, and every receiver was 20 yards plus downfield with no hot route. One of those was a sack. That's how you kill your quarterback against zero. That's not great. And that's also part. Dorsey needs to be okay, Josh, there's been this, theory, or some talk on Twitter where it's Dable kind of mellowed Josh out to an extent, whereas both Allen and Dorsey have the same kill mentality, the same go for the gusto, kill shot mentality, which Josh kind of needs that mellowing presence. He kind of needs the Dable, whereas Dorsey's kind of just giving into his deepest, darkest desires, if you will. And it's just maybe that is part of it, but just whatever it is, it doesn't result in a cohesive offense. And like I said, just going back, I didn't expect an overarching shift, right? When you're up 17-0, don't run the ball. And like you said, David, right? Then if you're just trying to run the ball against an aggressive defense, that's not going to bode well. Right. But just
that would have been a panic move, right? It's if they were just that would have been the wrong thing to do. And they didn't do that.
Right. That's not what I want. But what I want is when it's very clear that the deep shots aren't working and Miami continues to just work its way back in the game and ultimately takes the lead at a point, right? And it's just or very close to the lead if they didn't actually have it. And it's just your answer to that. Right. Your answer to that is okay, we're just going to continue to chuck it, continue to take deep shots. And it's why? If it's not working and it's not working, why don't you try to work in some of this stuff in the short to intermediate game, right? You have Cole Beasley, who you just, got back to be a safety valve. Let him get open underneath and just kind of fall down. That's what he does. You have Diggs, who can make stuff happen. You have James Cook, who you kind of got to be a yak guy. I don't know. It was just kind of a frustrating game offensively as it progressed. But again,
frustrating game where they had 400 yards and scored 34 points. That's the weird part about this is
see, and that's what's frustrating. And it goes back to my earlier point.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but just
it
goes back to my earlier point, because people will look at these stats. People will bring up these stats and be yeah, but they had 400 yards and they scored 30 points. It's yeah, that's great. And I'm glad they did that. But if you watch this game and say it was a cohesive offensive performance, maybe I don't know what I'm watching. Maybe that's just it at the end of the day, is I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's more than likely the case. But just I can't say that. I can't after that game say that was a cohesive offensive game plan or a cohesive offensive game.
That's fair. That's fair, dog. All right. That is that for what went right and what went wrong. We did in fact say what went right and what went wrong. So the segment is over now. We are going to move on to everyone's favorite segment. It is an award-winning segment. Just something that everyone keeps loving and talking about, and we encourage everyone to do so. I'm truly just stalling so I can actually find this friggin' soundbite.
Oh, I got the audio.
Oh, you got it. Okay, you got it.
You ready?
Right, cool. Thank you. Let's do it. We're gonna play Truth or Rubbish.
The truth or rubbish. Let's go.
Thank you, Kyle.
This is everyone's favorite segment, as you said.
Yes. We do encourage everyone in the chat to play along with us. Throw in your take of whether this statement is true or rubbish. We do encourage this. Yeah. So hold on. Am I gonna ask you?
Oh, I got it. I'll ask you.
Okay.
I got the questions for you, right? I still got that brain power. This is what I devoted most of my brain power to today is figuring out these questions. All right, David. True or rubbish? Kaiir Elam is cornerback 2 moving forward.
True.
This
Please,
was
God,
true.
let it be true.
After all, can't believe it. It was true.
Now, this might be true just sort of by default. In that, Dane Jackson might not actually. That's how the Bucs won their division, right? But Dane Jackson unfortunately went down with a knee injury. But Kaiir Elam came right in and truly made multiple plays. That interception was huge. I mean, that was a massive play to make in that scenario. It was very, very needed at the time. And I think that, it wasn't just his plays and coverage. I mean, Eric brought this up on Twitter, breaking down that great run stop that he had. I mean, that again, that was something that could have gone for a much bigger play. And he was able to get there, be where he was supposed to be, make the tackle. I mean, for tackling, he made a great tackle there. That was really, really great. Real quick, I'm going to interrupt this to bring up. I do have something new on the wall.
Wow!
Wait, hold on. Oh my God! This way. There we go.
There you go.
Say, signed Stefon Diggs jersey that my friends because in their words, well, you couldn't just have Allen without Diggs. So,
Allen and Diggs are my favorite couple. They are such a cute
couple. Aren't they? Also, shout out to my barber because I got a haircut on Saturday.
Whoa!
I think it looks great.
Looking nice.
He's also massive Bills fan, by the way. I told him to watch the podcast. I don't know if he managed to last this long. To Sonny and in particular to Mr. Volkers for doing me right and for making a great Bills barbershop, basically. I mean, come on. Got a signing jersey from Josh Allen. He's got all these different pictures from the snow game against the Colts.
Oh, nice!
It's pretty fun. I might have to do something next time I'm there.
Do a live podcast while getting your haircut.
That's right. Oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that.
That'd be interesting. Okay, yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to the next truth or rubbish.
Kaiir Elam. What did I just say? Kaiir Elam. Good. Okay. Yes. True. Okay. This one's a bit wild. Okay, I kind of went a little bit wild on this one. This is not at all inspired by a tweet that you and I saw earlier by
definitely not.
Infamous Twitter user in the Bills.
Definitely not.
Bills sphere, if you will, or he's not in the Bills sphere, but he's known by the Bills sphere. True or rubbish? Ken Dorsey has been unjustly made a pariah by the loser and virgin fans who refuse to admit that Josh Allen is mid.
That is utter rubbish.
That is rubbish all after all. It was all rubbish.
Don't tell him. Don't let him know.
Now, here's the thing. You don't want to say who this person is. I will outright say that it was Steven Ruiz. Because I can't stand this script anymore. I just can't. This man went on a podcast earlier this week that I listened to, and he basically said that Ken Dorsey is giving a masterclass in play calling this entire season, and if he had a normal quarterback, we'd all be talking about it more. And I had certain parts of my brain just sort of melt at that particular comment because I couldn't really process that in a sane way. And like, look, I don't disagree with the fact that Josh Allen is not a normal quarterback because he very obviously is not. But my God, man, like when your initiative is to just find the problem and make it Josh Allen, it's pretty easy to say that Ken Dorsey is giving a masterclass in play calling.
My thing is, I guess my rebuttal to that is, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, but like, even if we want to pretend that that's true, right? Like, even if, let's for a second live in that world where, yes, Ken Dorsey is, even though it's his first year doing it, he is this messiah when it comes to quarterback calling. Or play calling. We have never seen someone do it as well as him. He is calling just a masterful offense, and it's being thwarted by his elite quarterback. Whatever. Let's pretend this is true. Like, then he's not doing his job. Like, if he's not putting the quarterback that he has in the best position to succeed because he'd rather run his system, then he's not doing his job. Like, so
and by the way, more or less what happened, because when they were struggling in the red zone, the thing that ended up helping them more often was going back to plays that they ran under Daboll.
Yeah.
When they were more successful in the red zone. And then they were more successful.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to cough. Yeah, it's just, I don't know how, and like, this is like one of the things that like, it's one of the worst types of coaches you can have, right? The coach where it's like, yeah, no, he does. Right. He doesn't care. Yeah. In theory, right. Like the coach that doesn't care about the personnel that he has. He cares about his scheme, and he's going to, try to put square pegs in round holes or whatever, or fight, whatever the phrase is, because, he wants his scheme to work. He's not going to mold the scheme to the players that he has. And it's like, I'm not even sure if that's what's happening, but if it is, like, if your argument is, if your argument is that's what Ken Dorsey is doing and he's good, it's like, This is
there's
wild.
So much to try and unravel from that particular comment from that person that honestly, we're going to move on. We're just going to move on.
All right, we're moving on to more league-wide things now, because we've talked a lot about the Bills game here. We did go an hour. I am shocked. Okay. True or rubbish? Despite making the playoffs, there are 2 coaches who coached this weekend who should not be back with their teams next season.
Okay, I'm going to say rubbish because
that
I
is
can't
rubbish
think of
all after all. It was all rubbish.
I can't think of who the second coach you're thinking of may or may not be.
I saw some
because like the first one,
of course.
Obviously, the first one that's being talked about is Staley for giving up the 27-0 lead to the Jaguars, and I get that. I would rather fire Joe Lombardi and kind of reshape that offensive more than just getting rid of Staley outright. Although I get it. But I mean, I same right. It's just like that offensive staff really needs a revamping because Greg Roman just cannot put together a passing offense to save his freaking life.
No, he don't do that.
But and also management issues. I mean, my God, running a lead draw with 30 seconds left. What?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Bizarre. And I'm sure his thought process was, well, we have to run out the clock. My brother in Christ, you can't score on offense. You have Tyler Huntley. You were lucky to be in this game, period. Worrying running out the clock. Your defense has been great this game. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But I people are saying McCarthy, which like
McCarthy, Bowles.
I mean, Bowles really should be fired. That's not going to happen. McCarthy, if the only way that McCarthy gets fired is if the Cowboys really want to get Sean Payton, but it sounds like Sean Payton doesn't want to go. So I don't think McCarthy gets fired. And for as much as I don't like Mike McCarthy because he looks like he uses hot dog water as cologne, I do think that he's done a pretty good job this year. So actually,
that was rude. That
perfectly
was
safe.
That was quite rude.
He looks like NFL Brady Hoke, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Hold up. All right, I'm getting my screen back up, and we're just going to look at photos of Mike McCarthy. Welcome to the segment. Welcome to the part of the Cover One Roundup where we look at JPEGs of Mike McCarthy. This is what everyone tunes in for.
Obviously, this is great for audio listening.
Why?
Now, I will say the beard helps. The beard helps a lot, I think. The beard helps.
You're saying this dude's better looking than this dude?
Yes.
Why hot dog water though? That's a pull, and that really hits the core.
I need you to tell me that I'm wrong. Am I wrong? See, that man looks like an NFL head coach.
Okay.
The other guy, this guy, looks like he pulled up from the gas station, and it's just like, I just rolled out of bed. I'm here to coach a football. The ball, damn it.
Hell of a guy, Mike McCarthy. This is a pro Mike McCarthy podcast, okay?
I wouldn't go that far.
We only have hot dog water cologne. Is there any JPEGs of hot dog water cologne? Anything I feel like sharing with the class here? Nothing that I'm putting on the screen. Okay. Moving on. True or rubbish? The main reason to watch this Monday night super wild card weekend game, it's not going to be a good game. So the main reason to watch is that the new Mandalorian trailer is dropping.
I'm going to call rubbish because obviously I love the Mandalorian and I'm excited for this new trailer, but also like at the end of the day, either the Cowboys or Tom Brady is going to lose this football game. And that makes me pretty excited.
Good spin zone. Great spin zone, even. Mandalorian. See, this is just, we're going to go on a tangent here because we have nothing else to do.
We made it to an hour. We're good.
We did, exactly. I love how we had a whole segment dedicated to Obi-Wan talk earlier in the year. And we were just like, yeah, no, it's a good show. It's flawed, but I think fundamentally, it's a fine show. And then Andor came out, which is like arguably the best Star Wars content since the 1970s, and neither of us said a peep about it.
You don't need to like have discourse over something that good, right? Like
it's just
because it would just devolve into, well, remember that? That was great. Yeah. That was great. That was amazing. Remember when he said that? That was great. That's all that would have been.
It was incredible. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is an Andor podcast now. I'm fine with it. Andor is incredible.
Yeah.
Great show. Mandalorian season 3. Grogu. Is he the best? No, I don't. Grogu's kind of overrated. I'm not gonna lie to you. Overmarketed.
Folks, that is going to do it Thank you for tuning in to this wonderful and chaotic podcast. As you always do, we are so grateful for all of you that stick around to help us and support us. One of the things that you can do to support us, leave us a like on YouTube as you had tonight. If you're listening to it on audio, leave a 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps grow this channel. Are up to you by Cover One, and in particular One Pass. It's again, this is sort of our main way of getting access to the things that we use for things like Football Out, even just sort of helping with editing and software and stuff like that. It's a great help. It's the best way you could sponsor us. It's direct to us. You're not giving YouTube or big podcast network or whatever. It's all going right to us, and we are super appreciative of all of our One Pass subscribers. You can follow on handle on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on all sorts of places on YouTube. And again, this is how you're watching this podcast right now. So hit that subscribe button already. If you have some friends that you think would enjoy a weird sort of chaotic podcast about Bills, tell them about us. Tell them about the Cover One Roundup podcast, because we would love to have more of y'all in the chat. Thank you all. You on Twitter.
Sorry, you cut out. I'm at Kyle Silagyi.
Thank you. You can find me at DFAUXY at DFoxy. Be it for us tonight. Bye-bye.